We are listening to Ant Food. I found them on Spotify, and I was like, oh, gotta give a little shout out to the Ant Food peeps. Okay, let's kill said music, as fabulous as it is, so that I can officially greet you and our gang here today. Tim, I'm gonna spotlight you alongside me. Then you can take over. Welcome to this week's weekly briefing. I'm Joel with RevThink, and it is Thursday, May 27th. Tim, what are we talking about today? We've only got 30 minutes, so I'm going to give it right to you.
That's great. Yeah, it's good to be with you guys today. You know, we have special guests, Katwo and Nico, joining us. I work closely with them on a one-on-one engagement. But what I found about their company that's so unique is that they're running a New York-based office and a Manila-based office. And that crossover of what they have to do, how they grew to this point, and really, truly what's possible if you kind of start recognizing the opportunities that the world is now giving us. I thought this would be a good chance to just explore what that means to expand into that kind of market space and, you know, we'll say like open up the doors to that. So Nico, Katwo, you guys are awesome. Thanks for being part of all the fun and games today.
No, thank you for having us.
You know, I think it was one of our first one-on-one engagements where you kind of presented this idea that you guys have an entire office, like big office space in Manila that really is handling a large part of your workload, or at least a good half of your workload, mm-hmm. Right? Tell us just the makeup of your company and like where the bodies are and I don't know, like
sure.
You know, define more to us of what we're going to talk about today, which is
sure.
multi-location office space.
So just a quick little history. So what happened is I relocated from New York to Manila, and in 2006 or say
no,
Katwo,
2004.
2006. Katwo and I started our company.
Oh yeah.
And at that point, that's when it starts. First, it was just us in our home living room.
Kind of like right now.
But it was just us. And then slowly we grew. I was teaching at the time as well. And then we had some interns, and then it just got slowly, started to grow. 2010, I think, is when we found some other partners. And then we grew the company a little bit bigger. And at that point, we had a team of almost 20 artists and admins. And then in 2014, we decided to move back to New York, but kept the company over there. So we decided to open up another company here, but still keep that, and finding a way how we could work together and I don't know if this term, it's not international, but buy something, right?
Bicontinental, I think.
Bicontinental.
It wasn't bicoastal.
And so the majority of the team is in Manila, but also they work independently. They do have their own clients in Asia. And slowly we're trying to build the company here as well, the way we did it there, kind of slow and steady. So right now it's just two of us, and now we're slowly getting a producer in-house. But so far, when we started the company here in 2014, it's been freelancers that we've been taking on to get most of the jobs done here as well.
And just to preface the context of it, like we moved to the States not because the opportunities presented themselves very clearly. It was mostly a quality of life. We made like a list of like, if we were going to have kids, what would be the advantages of staying in the Philippines versus moving to New York. So it was really a privilege to have that choice. So that was the decision. It was really a lifestyle decision. And when we were thinking about those, during those times when we were thinking, we were choosing like, should we move to Hong Kong? Should we move to Singapore or to New York? And the reason was, where we come from, the economy it was really hard to get projects the way that we envisioned our company to be in. So even at that point, we were actually thinking of even selling the company. Should we keep this? Is this thing going to hold us back from really? Should we just start our careers from scratch? So it wasn't an easy, let's start something new. This is like, we have so many opportunities in New York. It was mostly our lives are, it was a meaningful direction towards like, how are we going to set up our family and our partnership? in our careers. So the office in Manila really was an intentional decision to keep it at that point.
It really is pretty amazing accomplishment. You know, simply just to start a business in Manhattan is difficult by itself. To think that you guys are making greater life decisions of moving locations, establishing family, even gaining citizenship. Those are other hurdles you have to kind of imagine and appreciate that you guys have leaned into. And then there's this really interesting part of like you also left a company behind, so there's a benefit, but also I would imagine there too, like just the stress of
Oh yeah.
trying to manage something remote, probably not knowing how to do that very well, and trying to figure out who the key players are, and a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
back and forth involved in that. Some of my question is, did you find there was maybe a prejudice because you're coming from, maybe that's a too strong a word, but like a prejudice of that coming from a different country, you didn't really know what it was like to produce in America, so there was a holdback? Or did you find that was, a fair ground and easy, not easy going, but similar climb that someone that just started in the US could accomplish?
That's interesting because I felt kind of like in reverse. Since I pretty much grew up here, when I went to the Philippines, I had this idea of like, hey, I'm coming from New York. When I get there, I'll probably thrive even more. Did not happen that way.
Really?
It was more the other way around. It's like, oh,
Hard.
you're a foreigner. You're an amboy with the term like American born or American person. So I didn't get that idea of when I get there, I'll just thrive. People will just want to take me because I worked in New York City. I worked in like the top VFX houses here, but it didn't work that way. So I got the opposite. When I got, go ahead.
He's always like the outsider. Like, if that's the thing about being an immigrant, is that Nico was not white enough to fit in the United States. But when he went back to the Philippines, he's not Filipino anymore because he doesn't sound like them. So there's always sort of like that displacement. I didn't have the confidence that Nico had because like Nico studied here, he had connections here, he knew how it was to work in the industry here. I was coming in like with just a hope, just a dream. But what I found was that it's really, really hard to start a business where in the Philippines, like the bureaucracy is it's just built against you. There's no government support. There's a lot of, for example, it costs us around $3,000 to $5,000 every year just to renew our city permits. In New York, it costs us like, was it $9? So something ridiculous like that. So you're always fighting. But for me, the biggest challenge was when you apply for your green card, it takes a year or 2 years, and you go through a battery of everything from medical tests to just the documents. It takes 2 years, and on average. And that was the point where I was starting to build a team, and I was so excited. I actually wrote our handbook, and it was all about culture, and I loved everyone.
And then we left.
And then we left. So it was this thing that was just about to like leap, because there were a lot of things I learned from Nico when he worked in New York that I really wanted to bring in the Philippines. And then when it was just about to take off, I have to leave. So when immigration tells you have to leave, you have to leave. So that was a little difficult, but there was definitely, it's so much easier to start a business in the US compared to where we came from.
That's really interesting because there, again, like I imagine difficulties no matter what. Right, every business owner has some difficulty just starting a business, no matter what. I would think the cultural difference, probably Nico, what you were experiencing in the Philippines is there's a cultural difference or something culturally holding you back, which you really want to wish away. I think a lot of conversation we have in America today is like, can't we just wish this stuff away? Do we have to make it so difficult? Can't we all just be the same? But there is, Katwo, you use the term confidence. Like there's something of just how you feel displaced. So you're always wondering, am I always the outsider, or when do I finally make it? When am I legitimate? Let me ask you something about the Manila office, because I know there's benefits to kind of having that office around. And, maybe relevant to everyone listening is kind of the curiosity of what is it, what are those benefits that you have by having a whole secondary force back in Manila? Are they financial? Are they talent based? Are they support based? Just size based? Give us some
Sure.
sense of what you appreciate about the
It's
having that
it's
support.
it's a little bit of all of the above. Let's talk about financials first. Definitely in terms of cost of living, it's much less, and just minimum wage there is also it's less. So you do have some financial gain in terms of finding support over there, and we do use the team more as a support as well. A lot of the um, design and initial thoughts are done here, and a lot of the other legwork either in between, etc., are being done there. Also, what we took advantage of was the time zone advantage that we have since we are 12 hours apart. So what's great is when we do the work here, at our end of day, we send it over there, and they continue the work, which will be 6 o'clock here, will be 6 a.m. over there. So their end of day, they bring the files back to us, and we're able to accomplish 2 days of work in one day. So instead of getting the work end of day for our clients, we give to them early in the morning, first thing.
Does that mean your client's getting twice as much work from their day rate? Or do you find you can do twice as many projects because you could kind of get half of it done, but a larger scale?
Yeah. So okay. it's not necessarily that they're paying more for that service, but it just seems to work out with the way that we've done that financial, especially with the team in Manila. And since it's our own team, we also control the rates as well. So we're not just getting freelancer rates that are market rate. Let's say, for example, like New York market rates for them. So.
Katwo, I know just in many of our conversations, this is some of the stuff you work closely with, but the thought of like client facing, the Manila office, are they the client facing people for people in the Asian Pacific kind of region, and then you two are client facing for US based clients, or are you able to be client facing for both entities and vice versa? Could they be client facing with yours?
There are relationships that we've built with existing clients in Manila that still want our presence. Nico, they still want to see me and Nico, so sometimes we'll jump in a call. But we've given the Manila office autonomy so that they can handle regional clients in Singapore and in Manila. But if the client requires us to be there only because we've invested a lot of time building some relationships, we'll be there. But what we really want to move our current clients in Southeast Asia is to be able to trust and build relationships with our head of business and our producers there. So that's still, I think that's been pretty successful, Nico.
Yeah. It's been pretty good.
I see Val is here, and I know in Moldova they face some of this similar kind of challenge. But a lot of people, when they think of, we'll say Manila versus Moldova, or Eastern Europe, that kind of stuff, they basically think cheap. So the best reason to use Rezonate is because Rezonate will be inexpensive. They can get more from you. Do you guys find that? And then if you do, kind of, how do you handle those conversations to say like, no, we're as strong in the marketplace as any of our competitors?
That's so funny because we're currently in that conversation right now with someone over there, but not from someone here, someone in Asia, actually Singapore, asking for us to even go lower. And I think, again, I think going through RevThink, we've given us the confidence to say, no, there's reasons why this is the rate. It's not just because of the certain specific commodities that we're giving you guys. There's other things that you don't even realize that we're giving you as part of it. So there's always those conversations on that. If we lower our price, I think it was very simple. We do get to the point where we just tell them, we're not going to make money if we go that low. We're going to go out of business, or we can't really provide you the services that we are promising. The stuff that the reason you called us, the stuff you've seen, is because this is what the cost is. So if we go lower than that, what you're asking, we won't be able to provide that for you.
Yeah.
So, and that's a transformation. Like you guys almost had to learn it and then believe it and then actually say the words out loud, right? Because those are all like 3 different steps of that transition, isn't it?
It's hard. It was hard. Don't get me wrong. At first, I guess at first we didn't have that confidence and belief that we can just do that, So it was always because there was a fear of losing the client.
Yeah.
And especially, and I'm sure it's very similar maybe in Moldova where, a lot of other companies are also just going, no, we could do it cheaper. And the notion is like, my company's better because my company's cheaper.
Yes.
And that's what we're fighting over
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
That thinking that my company's better because we're cheaper.
And they're proud that they can
And they're proud of
undercut you, that they're cheaper than you. And I think it was really this transformation of everything from positioning, everything from understanding like the sales cycle, that we've slowly built that confidence. And at the end of the day, like what we do isn't about, and Joel always tells us this, isn't about the commodity, but we're trying to scratch the surface of something more universal, right? What the client needs. Is it being heard? Is it being felt like they were being serviced? Like finally someone has holding their hand or whatever they need. Um, and I think that's been surprisingly a successful strategy for us, even though like, you compare the costs in Manila and in New York are completely different. But like we said, like the cost of doing business in a country like the Philippines is expensive. It's not just the labor; it's like the taxes, the a lot of the things aren't, a lot of things in the US are very efficient, and that's why anyway, that's another thing. But the thing is like we just can't go cheaper based on like just flat like labor rates, because it's not as straightforward as that. So we've also learned to appreciate and count that in our costs.
Yeah, I've been privy to conversations similar where someone's trying to outsource to, again, like let's say Eastern Europe or the Pacific Islands or whatever that is. And it's interesting because I often hear, I'll say in this case, a US based company almost saying to an international company, you don't deserve the right to make the kind of profits I deserve to make. So the US based company is saying, I'm going to keep half of all the money at no cost to me. And then I expect you to barely squeak out a living with whatever is remaining. And sometimes it can be, 9-1. The US based company wants to keep 90% of it and only just give 10% and still get the same results, as if that's the advantage you're supposed to gain. And it's I don't know, there is something in our economy that says this is what's going to be better. And, we hear it in other industries of outsourcing. But there really is something more valuable in the creative space of, no, this team has talent. They have a value proposition. They're delivering goods. They have the right and ability to do it. But then to plant that idea back into someone coming in from internationally who believes the best case scenario is that they're cheapest, and so therefore pick me because I'm the cheapest. It is a difficult transition.
Yeah, and that's where we were too. We're at some point we're like, no, how come they can cost it for that low? Like we were trying to figure it out as well when we first started. Like, how come they're so much cheaper? We're doing the same thing. So someone was getting cut somewhere.
I mean, you guys were the ones who said it. Like, anyone who has an internet connection, since like everyone went to work from home, would be after your job, and that's just the truth. But that doesn't mean that all the jobs are getting outsourced. It's much more nuanced than that. Are you doing the marketing? Are you doing the positioning? Are you in the right market? So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's equal for all. I I think it's really hard to break into the US market. It's not like you just knock on the door and then they'll let you in. It's it's a it's a it's a much more nuanced way to do business in America than it is to do where we're from. Does it reap better rewards? Yes, but it also expects a lot of hard work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's never been just something that's handed to you.
Yeah, it's very competitive, isn't it? That's for sure. Joel and the Jumpstart class, they focus a lot on that positioning, at least from the very beginning, because there's so much value when you differentiate yourself from the marketplace. And it's when you write a positioning statement like everybody else is when you have to compete in other areas like financial or like basically undercutting everyone. But once you guys had that differentiating factor, pulled Rezonate out of out of the, let's say, the noise, then it really became a different conversation. I understand who Katwo is. I understand what our creative contribution is. I can choose that creative direction and put ourselves out there.
Life changing. I'll tell you guys, it's life changing.
It truly is. Yeah.
It is a fun part of that for all of us, I think, to found it, to discover it, to pass it on, to be evangelists of it. It's very, very rewarding everywhere. Joel, I saw you jumped in. Probably because I said your name, but did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I got spotlit. I will just say this, something that you know, obviously Katwo, you and Nico yesterday and inside Confab, we were diving back in again and refining the positioning. And it's something, you know, I beat this drum a lot, but I know this, that I've had probably 3 occasions now where working with an owner, really figuring out the positioning, working with a copywriter, going through that process, that when we finally nail it, that the owner, it's almost a moment that it's tears. It's like, oh, like finally I know who the heck I am, what I'm going to go say, and why this matters. And it's real, it's authentic. It's not just clever,
right?
There's something real there. And without it, I would just say this, that if you want to compete in the US, forget about it without that.
Yeah, totally agree. We felt it, you know, and going through the process, it changed us completely in terms of how we saw our company, how we saw our business, our people. And now that we're doing it, you know, now we're trying to train them to understand what our positioning is. That also took some time for them. They had to restructure everything they're thinking. They're like, it doesn't make sense. We don't understand. And it's been an interesting process. And I'm glad they're finally getting it. And I think that excitement that we felt when we had that hurrah, like Nirvana moment, they're finally getting those Nirvana moments with our current positioning. So it's great.
I want to ask a question. Let's just keep it like pretty elementary, but like really the question is how do you guys actually do it? How do you actually have 2 offices?
Oh my goodness.
Because that makes me think that you guys work 24 hours a day, but that's not necessarily true. You've done so many. I'd set you up good too.
The first 2 years was like that.
The first 2 years were so hard.
The first 2 years.
It actually helped us during the shift during the quarantine. It was like this. It was just like that. So Nico is luckily like the person who's always looking for the best technology. What's like the best cloud server? So we were on all of the cloud tools since 2014, 2013. And because of the kind of technology that we were using, we were playing, it's sort of like we put it in our HR in the way that we evaluate our teams to be able to learn the technology. So we hardwired it into them as part of their onboarding when they join the company. We are very strict with HR in Manila, and it's because we're artists. We can just like, without structure, it leaves us a little, I feel like, for me personally, and I've seen this being successful in my team as well, if there's not enough structure, they kind of get lost. And because of that, like we knew that we had to be reliant on technology. We hardwired it into our HR, and we also kind of taught a code to our team how to email, how to communicate. So our communications are very, very strict. We don't use emails. We're very strict on, like, we use the platform monday.com. We use Slack. It's very regimented, the way that we communicate.
But before that, a little caveat, which we forgot to mention, when we left, we also left the company in the hands of our general manager.
A very capable
and amazing person. And she is basically replacing us when we're not there. So, but she is also the HR. And so she does everything that has to do with personnel, their leaves, making sure they're okay. If they have to buy new equipment, she's like the person that's making sure that everything's running well.
But she's also not the good guy. She knows that. She runs the team and she's like, I'm not the good guy. Talk to your producer if you want a good guy. So that has kept us, like, there was this balance, that there was like this strict person coming in, taking care of the team when we weren't there. So before the quarantine, like, we would visit Manila 2 to 3 times a year, just to check in. But yeah, a lot of it is structure for our team, so that as we were updating the tools that we were using or the way that we would communicate, it would run smoother.
I was not going to let you forget ads. I was going to I was totally going to say her name if you aren't going to say it, because
Yes.
I know there's a big part of what you guys have done is to bring her along, promote her, give her the right tools and opportunities that she needs. It's funny watching Nico jump into
I know.
the
I know.
there. But there's that part of it. What's interesting is we have the 7 ingredients, and one being operations. You guys are really defining like how important operations can be. Like if you have operations in place, and you guys use the roll up and the splits and factors method and that kind of stuff, and that allows for the interpretation of your expectations. You give that to Eds. Eds can run the team that way, and then of course that kind of project tracking and resource tracking that you guys have in place to look at the team, manage that. It's wonderful to see you guys live this lifestyle now that you're not such a slave to 2 offices and trying to keep something going. And most importantly, recently just leveraging 2 different offices. The Manila office gets its own projects, it lands its own clients, it does its own jobs, it has its own producers. And then when you have a New York based project and you share it, those producers can also step in, or your New York producer can produce something from the other side of the planet.
Yep.
It's really awesome to watch that operation in place and working very well. That is kind of the gift. We talk about the mature company having that in place. And I think what you said, 12 years, 14 years of business now, or whatever it is, you're obviously getting into a place where you've graduated more and more into recognizing and depending on that.
Yeah, and we do notice the differences. There are, even though like the Philippines is considered like English speaking country, they understand the language very well, they speak it as well, but there's still nuances. And we've noticed that in our first 2 years. Before we were trying to just, from a producer here, just going straight to the team in Manila, and there's nuances that they wouldn't understand in some of the notes. So it took us about 2 years to kind of get people up to speed in terms of like just these nuances, like lingo, sometimes just in emails, which was it's a big deal. It seems really small, but then you realize if they didn't grow up with certain lingos, they wouldn't understand what those things mean. So
yeah, it is funny, the things you have to, it's the things you don't realize are things you have to learn the most, because it's like, oh, that makes sense that you wouldn't know what that means.
Yeah.
So let me have to go beyond just giving you that basic note or whatever. Well, I'll say I wanted to welcome you guys into this conversation because I don't think a lot of people recognize or knew that Rezonate was, would you say bi-continental?
I don't know if that's the right term, but sure.
And we don't know either. If not, we're inventing it right now. As an agency, or even that you have really truly a separate arm that's thriving just as strongly as your New York-based unit, and then you could have something to collaborate back and forth.
Yep.
For me, that's such an amazing strategic conversation, and I thought a lot of people could benefit just knowing that you're out there in doing that.
Yeah, it can be done. Just understanding what the limitations are, and I think time, meaning the time zones, would make a difference, because then you have to realize when you have to be awake and your clients are awake. So
yeah, pretty cool. Well, as always, you guys are in community. You guys are very active in RevCommunity. So there's a lot of the conversations that I see you jumping into. And I know this for sure. If anyone has any questions or desires to understand how you guys did it, some of the tricks of the trade, you're even in Lady Bosses, I think, Katwo. So you even have that whole perspective as well. And I personally just love, you guys know this because I saw you last week live, by the way.
Yes.
Joel, I sat at breakfast with these two.
It was amazing
in New York City at Balthazar. So we
were still like, is this real? It doesn't feel real to me.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
To just give you guys a hug finally after working with you guys for almost over a year. It's just awesome to do that. So it's great to just, give people a chance to hear your story. I love that.
I was just going to say, before we sign off, let me just share something cool, because in the community, we now have our calendar that you can subscribe to and see. So yay, right here on general discussion, click on the community calendar and you can see the briefing, other things that are going on. So yeah, you can see, well, here, like we did today, you can see we have the advantages of international talent, or why we run a remote office. And there's your handy link, all that. So you can subscribe, you'll never miss out. It's all that good stuff.
Yeah, pitching is hard. Good job, Joel. Keeping the technology moving.
I'm trying.
Nico, Katwo, thank you guys so much for being part of our weekly briefing. We love your
Yes,
story.
thank you so much.
Love you guys so much. Can appreciate that. As you can tell, we truly exist so you can thrive in business, life, and career. And more and more, we just love to share those stories. So if you want to be part of our weekly briefings, we'd love to have you and your story be part of our conversation as well. Please reach out to us. We'd always love to be part of it. And we'll continue this conversation more in the chat rooms and RevCommunity too. So until next week, and when we do the weekly briefing, we'll sign off here and give everyone a thank you for Nico and Katwo.
Good job, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Yes. Thanks everyone for being here as well.